Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
Good morning, Bart. How are you?
I am doing great. Just a little bit more morning left.
Yep.
Well, it's been a while, so I'm glad we get to get back together and do one of these shows. What you got for a joke for me?
Likewise. I was out with the norovirus a few weeks ago,
Ugh.
so I have a joke that's fitting. So
Uh-oh.
where does a I had to parse through a lot of ones to find one that was appropriate, but
Okay, sure.
where does a boat go when it's sick?
The doctor?
The dock.
The
You
doc?
got it.
Yeah, the doc. I was in the right vein anyway.
Yeah, yeah, you got it.
So I've been lucky enough to be married to the same wonderful woman for 33 years as of today. And so, in honor of my anniversary, I decided to do more of an anniversary type joke. So, what makes marriage a lot like fine wine?
Hmm. I don't know.
It gets better with age, but sometimes still gives you a headache. So,
True
anyway,
words.
there's my little marriage joke.
Love it.
All right. Well, I'm going to start sharing a little content and we will give a month's worth of Dynamics and Power Platform updates all at once. So, starting with Power Platform as usual. First, I'm just going to talk about a quick solution that the PowerCat team built that will help you review Power Automate flows that are part of your solutions and give you a bunch of advice on do they seem to be constructed well? Do we have any advice on making them more resilient? Those kind of things. So if you use quite a bit of Power Automate, thought that might be pretty helpful. Next one is a post that is, I think, extremely relevant as skills in our agents are becoming more and more mainstream, kind of everywhere you might want to have them, even in just the Microsoft ecosystem. We can put them in Foundry agents. We can now put them in Copilot Studio agents. I think there's even a place in some of the M365 agent builder agents that skills are at least about to light up if they aren't there. They're there in Scout, they're there in GitHub Copilot, they're there in CoWork. So skills are pretty important. And this is just a good description of how to think about them and whether something belongs in a skill or in the main core instructions. And when you are looking at putting a bunch of skills together, when does it make sense to just add more skills? And when does it make sense to actually carve off a child agent? And it's just really good advice. So I'm just going to leave it at that take a look at this to try to make sure you're thinking about skills in the right way moving forward. If you build Copilot Studio agents, it is pretty assured that at some point you're gonna want to try to debug them. And it's pretty cool that Roll built an agent analyzer for classic Copilot Studio agents. So all the ones before this new change that allows for skills and memory and the new orchestrator to take center stage and the deprecation of topics and all that stuff. But if you are building one of the new ones, he built another modern analyzer for that. So take advantage of these analyzers to help you troubleshoot, debug, and make your agents better. If you build IVR or voice agents, this is a very long, reliable set of ways to think about what's different about voice agents and what's even common among all agents about how you need to think about making sure that if it's going to be used at scale and anything that you would put out to the general public, you're going to have to assume it's going to be used at scale, whether it is fronting a web chat, whether it's fronting a voice interaction, whether it's in front of a SMS conversation, whatever it is you're allowing an agent to interact with the general public. What is it that is the most important thing? And in this author's kind of estimation, reliability of getting the correct answer is more important than just about anything else. And then he goes through a whole bunch of things to think about and how to curate the way you do things, the way you build things, how to build a framework for both controlling the functionality of, and then thinking about the builder experience and thinking about the testing experience, and just it's a really good article that can be used no matter what technology you're using to build it. And then a few tips right at the very, very bottom saying that if you are using Copilot Studio to do this, here are some things to make sure that you're doing right. So take advantage if you are building voice or really any scaling type agent that's going to hit the general public. So I talked about testing solutions for Copilot Studio. I also saw one for Power Apps. So a new MCP server out there for the testing of Power Apps. And it's sort of like giving the playwright skills that are out there already a bunch of helpers of specifically what kinds of things to do in a Power Apps scenario to make sure that it is tested with even easier instructions. So take advantage if it's going to help. Dataverse is continuously evolving. And in July, there are a couple things that we have done to try to make sure that people that are leveraging Dataverse can do so with even more ease and power. One of the most important ones is there is a plugin for various coding agents, and this plugin is the Dataverse plugin, and it works in Claude Code, it works in GitHub Copilot, it works in Cursor, and it allows any of those coding agents to understand all of the best practices about how to make changes to Dataverse in order to code up the functionality even better. And when should it do a plugin? When should it just do an action? When should it do things in Python? When should it do it using the pack CLI? When should it use other CLIs like the Dataverse CLI? It's just all kinds of really good stuff in this. So that is a big deal. Another one is there's a whole bunch of MCP capabilities, and this is probably a little more relevant for Copilot Studio than Dataverse directly. But these MCP servers are kind of SaaS-based, ready in the Microsoft ecosystem to just be connected to and put a couple of settings in to connect to your instance of Salesforce or your implementation of Stripe or Oracle or whatever else. And these MCP servers make agents way better, regardless of what type of agent it is. Copilot Studio agent, M365 Copilot, Cowork, GitHub Copilot, Scout, any of those that can handle an MCP server. Use these to your advantage to try to make them smarter and more capable at solving the problems that they are going to help you solve. Power Pages has a new preview feature for letting Dataverse itself be the authorization control plane for your portal users instead of it being on the portal itself doing that authorization. And that's a really sort of kind of hard to describe distinction there. But what it actually does is it now leverages that same authorization layer that you are using for your users and teams to make sure internal users have the right permissions to do things and the right access to data to Power Pages portal users. So it's now a unified engine, and we just get to treat the scenario that we're kind of building things in to be at that layer. And by doing that, it actually puts the control of the data access as close as it can be in the whole architecture of Power Pages to the actual data to try to make sure that no little slip ever happens, and it just makes it more secure. And because we've invested tons in making sure that authorization for the actual Dataverse user community has been enriched and made very, very capable and very, very reliable, that just means the portals are a little bit more enhanced in that scenario too. But it also gives you better audit visibility of what's going on because these things now show up in the audit logs just like any other things. You can now not only do table level and row level, but now even column level security the way you could for users and teams for portal users. You can control some scopes, and it's built right into the same experience of building it that you used to use. You just now have some more tools to deploy in it, and it should just work a little bit faster and maybe even a little better. So all of it should be pretty straightforward. Take advantage if you are building Power Pages. So from the generic Power Platform realm, that's my updates for the last month, actually. The rest of these are all dynamics on the customer engagement side, things that I want to at least mention. And I'll try to be fairly succinct in these because I know I'm running short on time to give Lauren a chance to work on things. But wanted to make sure that if you use Cowork yet, love Cowork, by the way, there are both Dynamics Sales and Dynamics Service plugins for that. So tell your users who are using Cowork, if they're a seller, turn that on. If they're a service person, turn that on. That way, when they're in Cowork, Cowork can do things and have all the context of basically the MCP servers for service and for sales. And then that also, when you turn either of those on, it automatically turns on the Dataverse MCP server so that whatever questions that you are asking of Cowork or whatever you're asking Cowork to go do on your behalf, it will have access to all of Dataverse. And if it's a sales related thing, it has all the extra context of what sellers typically do. And if it's a service related thing, all the context of what service people usually do from a behavioral standpoint and other things about the way it's being guided to be super relevant in those scenarios. So the one thing that you should be aware of is in Cowork, both of these plugins, regardless of what you're having it do, if it is going to take action, it will never do that autonomously. You can't prompt your way into having it make an update in CE. It will always throw up in Cowork a nice form that talks about all the data elements that it's planning to post into the application and give the user a chance to look at it and say, yep, I approve. Go ahead and push that in. So that's kind of the one caveat that I would say. Otherwise, use it. In our contact center solution, if you're using Dynamics Contact Center, and you really don't even have to be in Contact Center. If you have Customer Service Enterprise, this comes with it, but I don't know how you would really need it. Maybe you do. But bringing workforce engagement management to the forefront, and this now is generally available, so you can use it. It will help you plan for staffing. And when we built this, we knew that there was a huge push across the industry to try to do a better job of both assisting agents, I got to use the right words, assisting your customer service representatives, the people, with technology in the agentic realm. So your average handle time should be decreasing, and we're kind of understanding how that's working and using that as part of the planning. We're also knowing that you're putting those agents out as deflection mechanisms and that can change actual number of calls or number of chats or number of emails coming in that have to have a human work on them. And that's going to affect staffing. So understanding not only what people are going to be needed based on all that, but then it will also help you generate some projections about AI costs of what all the agents are going to be doing as they're taking on more and more work and giving more and more help. So all sorts of great stuff in here. And the one last thing that I'll say is, as this has gone generally available, we know that there are a lot of people that either have contracts with or have some specific use case where you're still using something like a Variant or a Calabrio or a Nice or an Alvaria. I'm not as familiar with that one. But if you're already using one of those for your workforce management, we still have adapters to let any of those solutions plug natively into the service operations capabilities of Dynamics in order to use those instead of our native engine for what you're doing. So good stuff around workforce management and trying to change it a little bit for workforce engagement management to span both what the humans are doing and what the technology agents are doing in that realm. Next one, I'm just going to mention, it's a pretty good read in just thinking about how turning our CRM platform or our sales and our service and our field service platforms into a headless agentic capability that can be used right inside of a chat interface wherever that chat interface is being surfaced, whether it's right in Coworker, whether it's sitting in a Word doc, whether it's sitting in Outlook, whether you're already in Teams. You can get at your CRM questions to be answered and taking actions in any of those places because of making this headless at this point. And it's getting better and better, and it all depends on how you've got that set up and whether you're using the most modern MCP server for Dataverse and all those kind of things in terms of that entire experience. But we have done lots of things to make sure that that can be completely headless. So read through this and get some ideas about what that could mean for productivity of your workers if they think about it the right way. Another new feature on the service side of things, in that if email is a channel that is still quite important to your organization, and it is for most, that the email engine for taking the agent that can look at an email and try to propose a response and do something with it has been generally released and is generally available to turn totally autonomous if you want it to be now. So autonomous email resolution is now a feature that you can just go configure and tell it where to find all of its information that it needs and all that kind of stuff. But you do have the ability to run it through a bunch of test cases and kind of watch what it would do before you actually turn it on, if you know what I mean, so that it's actually sending them directly to your customer base. Good stuff. If you are in field service, your field technicians that are using the mobile experience on whatever device they're carrying have some new controls that you can enable for them if you think they would add value. So if they look at lists of information fairly regularly, they almost always do, there's a new grid that allows them to see more information and to have it organized a little bit differently. So if it makes it clearer in the way you present information, go for it. Changing booking statuses you have to do on every call that you make. We've now added some icon capability in there and tried to enhance it to make it just a little simpler to use. We also have a new note-taking experience specifically for field technicians where they're usually having to take multiple pictures and all those kind of things, but you still want things to land on the timeline. You just didn't really like that timeline control in the way it was set up. So good stuff there in the note-taking capability. Lookups, you can make them smarter and you can make them faster, and you can actually disable the click-through on lookups if that has caused people some consternation of, I just need to click on it, but I don't need to launch it. And because it's hyperlinked, every time my finger gets over there, things just launch. So anyway, a lot of good stuff that you can flip on. They're all opt-in. None of those are just taking effect, but you can turn all or any pieces of that would help your techs on in field service. All right. So I talked a little bit about the service plugin in Cowork, and that is surfaced in regular Copilot as the service agent. So that service agent is now generally available as well and can do a lot of things that you might want it to do in the context of M365 Copilot as well. And so all the places that you use in 365 Copilot, that service agent is there. And that's part of what makes things headless, is because of these agents we have pre-built into the experience. Same thing with a sales agent. And we have done quite a bit to both the service agent and sales agent as they have gone GA just in the last few days. And at general availability, we gave them a whole lot more capability to take action in lots of different ways, and quite a few more tools even to just understand the context and retrieve things that you might want them to do. So take them for a test spin if you haven't, now that they're generally available and showing up everywhere. If you're in field service, there are some nice new enhancements if you're on the dispatch side of things and using the schedule board. So the main things that we did is we allowed adjusting a whole bunch of bookings at once, and using normal controls like the control button and clicking on a bunch of the various bookings, you can move them all the same amount of duration. If you needed to shift everything 3 hours for 15 different ones, you can just go do that. Same thing about reassigning. You can click a whole bunch of them and take them all that you've clicked on and reassign them to the same person. And then lastly, we have kind of reconstructed and made the map view bigger and more usable for people who do location-based scheduling. And I think lastly, on the schedule board, if you would be helped by week numbers instead of just date ranges, because that's how you think, then that's now a one-click flip on to allow week numbers to be on your schedule board as well. So a lot of good stuff for dispatchers in field service. Last one that I'll mention is in the case management agent that's been around for a little while. We have now enabled a new mode for the case management agent that should make it a little more palatable for a lot of people to at least explore what's going on. And that is shadow mode. Sounds kind of fun. Anyway, shadow mode basically lets you turn on the case management agent, but with shadow mode enabled, it doesn't take the actions that it's recommending. You just see how it reasons. You see what it would have done. You see all the various things that you're kind of worried about. Is this going to do as good a job as a human? If I actually flipped on the case management agent in autonomous mode, and now you can actually flip full autonomous mode on with this shadow mode, and it won't do the things. You just see what it would have done, so you can evaluate it over a large enough compendium of potential cases to feel comfortable. Yep, it's going to do as well as my humans would have. Might not be 100%, but your humans aren't either. So if you can get at least a parity with humans, you're probably pretty comfortable taking it out of shadow mode and just using it in autonomous mode to go do things while still trying to continuously improve what you're feeding it so that it can get better and better and maybe eventually get to 100%. So there are my updates. Lauren, I am going to let you give a bunch of yours now.
Wow, that was a lot, but I think I may even rival you today in terms of updates I have.
Sounds great.
All right, so starting off in Business Central, we now have, let's see here, the ability to design AI agents in BC. So these agents can interpret high-level business goals, expressed in natural language, translate them into actionable steps. They're going to reason over BC data and then make informed decisions with the defined boundaries that users set up, and the agent runtime that powers these built-in agents provides core capabilities that are going to enable the use of agentic AI. They're defined, configured, activated, and run directly inside the BC environment. So you're going to be leveraging the same security model, the same admin tools, and UI as the rest of the product. And the experience really offers a low-risk environment for envisioning and prototyping these agents. And the design experience lets you really create and refine these agents using natural language. You can define their behavior and then test them with their profiles, permissions, and safely experiment in a BC sandbox environment. So just like we've seen in D365 F&O, we're going to be able to do that in BC as well. We also have, scroll down here, next in Project Ops, let's see. We have an updated date of August for GA for the ability to add support to import tasks from other projects so users don't have to create tasks manually in Project Ops. We also have the ability to support multiple project budget drafts with what-if analysis coming in August into public preview. So this really helps project managers to manage alternative budget versions directly within Project Ops. Also coming GA in September is the ability to manage exchange rates variances on cash advances. So users can use transaction currencies instead of just accounting currencies. It's also going to post any realized foreign exchange gains or losses, so books can stay accurate here. And then also in Project Ops coming to GA in September is the ability to reconcile project accrued revenue. So accrued revenue for completed work that hasn't been billed can really help users keep financial reporting accurate. But let's say when work in progress doesn't really reverse as expected, your revenue numbers can quickly become unreliable. And what this feature does is gives you visibility into those missed reversals and provides tools to fix them fast and help you keep revenue reporting accurate to avoid that hassle of manual corrections. So with this, you can verify a more clean balance state or view imbalances across transaction, across project, across ledger accounts. We're also going to have configurable date filters that will default to the 90-day view of recent activity, but this can be overridden for longer or shorter periods of time. And then also our links to launch the product WIP and ledger reconciliation WIP reports directly from this form. So you can actually see the broader impact of accrued revenue, not just mismatches. And then last, the reconciliation journal here is going to create and post correcting GL entries without manual calculation. So the system will automatically derive correction amounts in the transaction, accounting, and reporting currencies. And all the corrections are going to be recorded for a full audit trail, of course. Then we have an updated date of September for GA for showing accounting currency with the correct label. So currency units are correctly shown in Dataverse. And we have an updated date of September for GA for updating correction journal usability, where you can actually make different corrections within the same journal. You can correct a wider range of fields, and you can easily select transactions that need correction in Project Ops. And then we've got 4 more here in Project Ops. GA in October are going to be a few new features here. One being the ability to initiate time entry creation from project and tasks view for team members. And also the ability to track task and project level staffing as a team member as well. That's also coming in October, as well as the ability to view current and upcoming staffing for team members using the timeline view in Project Ops. And then last in Project Ops coming to GA in November is the new calendar interface for time entry. So the web experience for time entry in D365 Project Ops is getting a series of improvements here that are going to make time entry a lot faster, a lot more accurate. These upgrades include a new calendar interface. Here you can view, create, change time entries. You could also track time across different timelines, such as weekly or monthly. There's going to be tighter integration of the work breakdown structure for assigned tasks and projects within the time entry creation step. And then also improved tracking with benchmarking of actuals versus target hours, and then corresponding visualizations that really help out with tracking progress on project tasks. Next, let's move on to supply chain. So first off, we have a date of August 1st for GA of the ability to analyze demand planning using generative insights. This helps with identifying things like patterns, seasonality, trends, and really signal correlations to improve forecast accuracy. Then in manufacturing and asset management, coming to GA in September, is automatic batch stability testing. So with this, users can use the new time-based generation type for quality associations to establish batch stability testing rules for each product. Users can define how often each batch needs to be retested, how wide that execution window will be for operators to complete those tests. And you can also set up a dedicated batch job that generates quality orders for each batch based on the defined testing schedule. And you can also use the new batch stability testing workspace to get a comprehensive overview of where each batch stands at any given time. Which ones are due for testing, which are approaching expiration, which have slipped outside that execution window and need immediate attention. So these are some pretty big updates when it comes to managing batches in D365 manufacturing. Also, as it pertains to managing batches in manufacturing, is coming in GA in September. We have the ability to enforce same batch selection for raw materials in production and batch orders. So this feature, what it does is really ensure that raw materials consumed by production orders and batch orders all come from the same batch. So adding a lot of controls there. So process and discrete manufacturers can use it together with related production control capabilities that are going to govern how raw materials are actually allocated to a particular production order. So product designers and engineers, at the beginning of the product lifecycle can set the same batch requirement at the released product level. So it applies by default everywhere the item's consumed across its lifecycle. They can optionally fine tune it for individual bombs or formula lines where a different rule is appropriate. So there's a lot of configurability there. And then production planners and warehouse workers who reserve raw materials for production or batch order can then see the system automatically restrict that available on-hand inventory to a single batch per line instead of mixing quantities from several different batches. So the result of this is a much more consistent, traceable, single batch consumption pattern that's really needed for quality controlled manufacturing scenarios without requiring operators to remember and enforce the rule manually, which, is obviously risk for errors there. And then there's also some enhancements planned for future versions of these batch capabilities to further enhance same batch selection for raw materials, including same batch enforcement during master planning allocations, and then execution validation to ensure that same batch requirements are validated during picking and consumption for production. So big day for manufacturers that utilize batches in their processes. And then in planning, we have an updated date of August 1st for enhancements in demand forecasts, which allow users to create forecasts that consider the impacts of multiple inputs, including things like historical sales data, inflation, pricing, weather, etc. Then we'll hop over to finance, last but not least. We've got a handful of updates here in core financials. So this one I'm not entirely familiar with. It applies to Poland, but coming to public preview in August is enabling support for KSEF UUID in vendor payment journals in Poland. This feature extends the vendor payment journal framework in D365 to capture, store, validate, and process these aspects associated with vendor invoices that are issued through Poland's national e-invoicing system. Then also in core financials coming to GA in September is the automatic clearing of customer payment, which automatically clears bridge transactions generated from customer payments when the bank reconciliation completes. It's going to post clearing journals in a centralized payment legal entity, and then that legal entity and related party details are going to be displayed on reconciliation and inquiry pages. And this feature supports all customer types, including both same company and intercompany scenarios as well. And then last in core financials coming to public preview in September is the ability to create prepayment invoices that more closely reflect underlying sales order structure and tax requirements. So you'll automatically be able to derive sales tax and item sales tax groups information from sales order lines and then create the corresponding prepayment invoice lines. So tax calculations are going to more accurately reflect the nature of the goods and services being billed. And then last here we have in Globalization Studio, we have a GA date for September for the ability to enhance electronic reporting, in which we'll see ongoing improvements to make it easier for users to adapt to things like changing regulations by boosting flexibility, really simplifying the maintenance around this, and then enabling greater reuse across configurations so you can reuse those at scale. So we're only a few minutes over, but that was a lot of updates from both of our sides, Bart.
That is definitely a ton of stuff. So thanks for compiling all of it. As everyone knows, show notes are always one of the best places to find what's new going on in our platforms, and we'll direct you to the right other places to find all the stuff. So take advantage. We've got, I don't know, probably close to 100 solution updates over the last month that could be taken advantage of in your org. So you might want to glance through those and see if any be relevant, if those will help. And with that, I think we can see you in a fortnight, Lauren. Thanks again.
Sounds great. Take
All
care.
right. Bye.